This video shows expert active learning instruction with commentary from the instructor that reveals the thinking behind the teaching. Dr. Dolan's class includes quite a bit of time when students work alone and in groups on questions. Reflect on why an instructor might design a course that way. Let's hear the thinking behind Dr. Dolan's teaching.
Well, I always expect students to learn material that they can learn on their own, for example, information delivery, before coming to class. So I'll have them watch a Khan Academy video, or I'll have them read some material, usually through an open access text, because I want to keep my course as low cost as possible. And then I hold them accountable for that with a quiz that they have to complete before class. And that way I can use the class time for the more challenging material. So the things that will be difficult for them to do are things that I want them to do when I am there to help and when they have classmates there to help. And so I really try to spend class time doing that. Doesn't mean I don't lecture, it just means that I have the lecturer respond to where they are and what they need to know to be able to do the actual work.
In Dr. Dolan's class, students have been learning about how hormones and feedback loops regulate our use of carbon and energy, and have just worked with a neighbor to compare and contrast transport and signal transduction. They are now answering this question. Why might a question that asks them to recap a process be helpful to student learning? Pause the video and write down your thoughts. Let's hear the thinking behind the teaching from Dr. Dolan, and then we'll take a look inside Dr. Dolan's classroom.
So sometimes when students view videos or read material, it just goes sort of in one ear and out the other. And by making them recap, I get them away from simply regurgitating. So they have to formulate the ideas in their own words. And anytime you have to do that, it involves thinking. And I want them to think about the material, not just listen and repeat it back to me. And it also allows as a check for me, did they get what I want them to get from that material? So if they're completely missing or writing something else, I can diagnose that in the moment. Yes?
For insulin receptor, how does that play into anything? I'm confused. I thought it was just the glucose.
Well, think about transport versus transduction. And check with your group, and I'll be back. Okay? See if they're confused at the same spot.
What do you notice in this interaction? Pause to write down what stood out to you. Let's listen to what Dr. Dolan noticed in this interaction.
I think what was happening was they were confused about why insulin would need a receptor and then how that relates to the glucose transporter or glucose transport. And I felt like that student maybe missed some of the material from class, maybe they weren't in class that day, or maybe they could actually figure that out on their own, either by reviewing their notes or by talking to their group. And so I encouraged them to do that as opposed to check in with me. But I didn't want to leave them hanging, so I said I would come back and check.
Dr. Dolan directed the student to check with their group rather than providing an answer to the student's question. What are the possible benefits of this approach? Pause so you can reflect on this question. Now we get a chance to hear the thinking behind the teaching from Dr. Dolan.
There's a couple of benefits. First of all, they have to actually figure it out themselves. So the brain that does the work does learning. If I just tell them, they'll memorize it. And then when they have to face a new problem, they won't be able to transfer that knowledge to the new problem. They'll just tell you what they've memorized, which may or may not be relevant to the problem they're solving. The other thing that I really want students to do is to view other resources and other people as resources for their learning. If they think that I am the possessor of all the information, then they will not take ownership of figuring out things on their own and seeing each other as a way to help them learn. So I try to diffuse the sort of sources of information they use beyond me.
Let's take another peek into Dr. Dolan's classroom.
Talk to me.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if glucagon also uses transduction.
It does, because it also has a receptor.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So
That's exactly
do I
right.
have to explain that in this, or should I just, because we kind of talked about it up front, I just
Either way.
just say
Yeah, as long as you get it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah.
So the glucagon pathway, does it still need the glucose transporter to get the glucose out?
Yes, it's a different transporter, but yes. Why would it need a transporter to get the glucose out?
Because it's still polar, so it couldn't just
Go across the membrane.
But
Exactly.
It's a different transporter?
It is a different transporter. We'll actually talk about there's lots of different transporters for glucose. I think 14 in humans?
Really?
Yeah, why? Why do you think that would be?
Because for different types of cells?
Yep, different types of cells.
Dr. Dolan circulated and facilitated small groups for about 9 minutes, and most students remained engaged and working throughout this time. What do you imagine Dr. Dolan does to encourage students to use this work time productively? Pause and consider the range of possibilities. Let's hear from Dr. Dolan about what she thinks encourages students to use class time productively.
Well, I'm not sure they always do, but I'm reassured that many of them do. I think that they find the material interesting, so I think that's one thing. I try to pick problems that are actually interesting and worth solving. They also find it helpful to work on solving the problems or doing the work during class. If they don't do that, then they're going to be in a pickle trying to do it on their own, so it's sufficiently challenging. I also think they like having social support, so they like having each other to bounce ideas off of, and I structure that into the way that I have them interact so that they can check their thinking and get feedback, again, not just from me, but from each other. And when you have to explain something, you have to have thought through it. So it also has some level of accountability for the learning.
Designing a course so that students engage in meaningful and challenging work in class can be a big undertaking. Let's hear from Dr. Dolan about why she likes to teach this way.
I like teaching this way because there are many people that are really good at writing and delivering information or giving a compelling lecture. And so why not have that be the source of that content? So for example, Khan Academy videos are really quite good. They're clear, they're easy to understand, they're scientifically accurate. Why would I repeat that in class if the students can just look at that outside of class? What I think I am uniquely positioned to do is actually coach them through applying that content knowledge or that conceptual understanding to solving problems or understanding real life or realistic scenarios that were relevant either to their daily lives or to their future careers. And so I would like them to do that level of thinking, and that can't be done just through information delivery. They actually have to practice, just like when you ask someone to play basketball, the coach sets up the drills and has the team practice, and then the team has to play. You can't play the game for them.
Dr. Dolan explained that the brain that does the work does the learning, and she applies this principle of human learning in her large introductory biology course. Now that you've had a chance to see the thinking behind the teaching for this instructor, reflect on your own teaching. How does your teaching create time for students to, in Dr. Dolan's words, practice and play the game during class? Pause now to jot down some ideas. Thank you for joining us for this Realize video.